The shy waitress greeted the billionaire's deaf mother, but what she said in sign language shocked everyone. Subscribe now or this might be our last meeting. Follow, comment, and share to stay connected. Don't miss out. Let's dive in. The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble floors of Le Bernardin as Ana Martinez adjusted her black uniform for the third time that evening. Her hands trembled slightly, not from nerves about serving Manhattan's elite, but from the familiar weight of hiding who she really was. At 24, she had perfected the art of invisibility, moving through the restaurant like a ghost with a smile. "Table 12 needs their wine refilled," called Sarah, the head waitress, barely glancing up from her order pad. "And try not to spill anything on Mr. Blackwood tonight. He's already complained twice about the temperature in here." Anna nodded, gathering the bottle of Chateau Margaux that cost more than she made in a month. Marcus Blackwood. Even his name sounded like money. Old money, new money. The kind of money that made people bow their heads and avert their eyes. She'd been serving his table for 3 months now, and he'd never once looked at her as anything more than a piece of furniture. The dining room hummed with the quiet conversations of people who never worried about rent, about medical bills, about whether they'd have enough left over for groceries after paying for their children's school supplies. Anna knew that world intimately. She'd lived in it once in what felt like another lifetime. "Excuse me, miss." The voice was sharp, commanding, with just a hint of impatience that made Anna's spine straighten automatically. She turned to find Marcus Blackwood standing closer than she'd expected, his steel gray eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her stomach flutter inappropriately. He was tall. She had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze, with dark hair that looked like it had been styled by someone who charged more per hour than Anna made in a week. His suit was immaculate, probably Italian, definitely expensive. "Your wine, sir," Anna said softly, lifting the bottle slightly. "Not for me." Marcus gestured toward the elegant woman sitting at the table behind him. "My mother. She's been trying to get your attention for the past 10 minutes. Anna's gaze shifted to the woman and her heart clenched. Mrs. Blackwood was probably in her early 60s with silver hair pulled back in a classic chignon and kind eyes that seemed to hold a universe of stories. She was making subtle hand gestures, her face lit with a hopeful smile. Without thinking, Anna set the wine bottle on the nearest table and approached Mrs. Blackwood. "Good evening," she signed, her hands moving with practiced grace. "How may I help you?" The woman's face transformed with delight, her hands dancing as she responded. "Oh, how wonderful. I was hoping to compliment the chef on the salmon. It reminds me of a dish I had in Paris years ago. I'll make sure he receives your kind words." Anna signed back, genuinely smiling for the first time all evening. "Would you like me to ask him about the preparation? I believe he uses a special herb blend." Behind her, she was vaguely aware that the entire restaurant had grown quieter, but she was focused on Mrs. Blackwood's animated response about her travels through France and how few people took the time to really communicate with her. "You're very kind," the older woman signed. "Most people just smile and nod when they realize I'm deaf." "You sign beautifully. Where did you learn?" "I studied linguistics in college," Anna replied automatically, then froze as she realized what she'd just revealed. "Linguistics?" Marcus's voice cut through the moment like a blade. He was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What university?" Anna felt the familiar panic rising in her chest. She'd been so careful for so long, and now one moment of genuine human connection had cracked her carefully constructed facade. It was just a few classes, sir. Nothing important." "Nothing important?" Marcus stepped closer, his voice dropping to a tone that somehow felt more dangerous than when he'd been demanding. "You speak sign language fluently. You mentioned linguistics, and I'm betting that's not the only language you know. What else are you hiding?" The question hung in the air between them like a challenge. Anna could feel the eyes of other diners on them, could sense Sarah hovering nervously nearby, probably calculating how much trouble Anna was about to cause. "I should get back to work," Anna said quietly, reaching for the wine bottle. "Wait." Marcus caught her wrist, not roughly, but firmly enough to stop her movement. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her system, and she saw something flicker in his eyes that suggested he'd felt it too. "I'm sorry. That was unnecessarily harsh." Anna looked down at his hand on her wrist, noting the expensive watch, the manicured nails, the complete absence of calluses or scars that marked a life of physical labor. When she looked back up, his expression had shifted into something almost vulnerable. "Your mother is lovely," she said softly. "She was telling me about her trip to Paris. She likes you." Marcus released her wrist but didn't step back. "She doesn't like many people. Maybe because most people don't take the time to really listen." The words slipped out before Anna could stop them, carrying more edge than she'd intended. Marcus's eyebrows rose slightly, and for a moment she thought she saw the hint of a smile. "And you think I don't listen? I think you're used to people telling you what you want to hear." This time his smile was definitely real, transforming his entire face. "You know, you're probably right. But you didn't answer my question about the universities." Anna felt trapped, caught between the truth that could destroy her carefully built new life and the growing curiosity in Marcus's eyes. Mrs. Blackwood was watching their exchange with obvious interest, her knowing smile suggesting she understood more than either of them realized. "Columbia," Anna said finally, the word feeling like a confession. "I studied at Columbia." Marcus's expression shifted through several emotions: surprise, confusion, and something that might have been respect. "Columbia has an excellent linguistics program. What made you decide to change careers?" The innocent question hit Anna like a physical blow. How could she explain that she hadn't decided anything? That her career, her life, her entire future had been stolen from her by the person she'd trusted most? That she was working as a waitress, not by choice, but because it was the only job she could get after her reputation had been systematically destroyed? "Sometimes life doesn't go according to plan," she said instead, proud that her voice remained steady. "No," Marcus said quietly, his gray eyes studying her with uncomfortable intensity. "I suppose it doesn't." Mrs. Blackwood gestured to Anna, breaking the tension that had been building between them. "You two should talk more," she signed with a mischievous smile. "My son works too much and doesn't meet enough interesting people." "What did she say?" Marcus asked, his tone almost suspicious. Anna felt heat creep up her neck. "She said you work very hard." "That's not all she said. She also mentioned that you should eat more vegetables." Marcus laughed, a genuine surprised sound that made several other diners turn to look. "My mother did not sign anything about vegetables." "How would you know? You don't speak sign language." "No, but I know my mother's sense of humor. And judging by the way you're blushing, she said something designed to embarrass one or both of us." Anna opened her mouth to deny it, then realized there was no point. Marcus was clearly more perceptive than she'd given him credit for. "She thinks you should meet more interesting people." "Does she?" Marcus glanced at his mother, who was trying very hard to look innocent. "And what do you think? Am I meeting interesting people?" The question felt loaded with meaning Anna wasn't sure she wanted to unpack. Standing this close to him, she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle that probably cost more than her monthly rent. She could see the fine lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled more than his reputation would indicate, and the way his suit jacket stretched across his shoulders. "I think," Anna said carefully, "that you're used to meeting people who want something from you. And you don't want anything from me?" The question was asked lightly, but Anna caught the underlying edge of vulnerability. How many people had disappointed him? How many relationships were built on his bank account rather than genuine connection? "I want you to let me do my job before Sarah decides I'm more trouble than I'm worth." Marcus glanced toward the hostess station where Sarah was indeed watching their interaction with barely concealed anxiety. "Right. Of course." He stepped back, but his eyes remained fixed on Anna's face. "But this conversation isn't over." "Sir?" "I have questions, Anna Martinez." The fact that he knew her full name shouldn't have surprised her. He probably knew the names of everyone who worked in places he frequented. "And something tells me you have answers that might surprise me." Anna felt her carefully constructed world beginning to shift on its axis. For 3 months she'd been just another invisible service worker, safe in her anonymity. Now Marcus Blackwood was looking at her like she was a puzzle he intended to solve, and that was the last thing she could afford. "I should really get back to work," she said again, but this time it sounded more like a plea. "Of course." Marcus stepped aside with a gesture that was almost courtly. "But Anna, I'll see you next week." It wasn't a question or a request. It was a promise that made Anna's pulse quicken with equal parts anticipation and terror. As she walked away, she could feel his eyes following her movement across the restaurant. "Mrs. Blackwood caught her eye as she passed, signing a quick "he likes you" that made Anna stumble slightly over her own feet. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of wine refills and food service, but Anna was hyper-aware of table 12. Every time she glanced in their direction, Marcus seemed to be watching her, his expression thoughtful. When they finally left, he paused at her station. "Have a good evening, Anna," he said quietly, then leaned closer. "And next time, maybe you can tell me about Paris. I have a feeling your story about studying there might be more interesting than you're letting on." Anna's blood turned to ice. She'd never mentioned Paris, Mrs. Blackwood had. But somehow Marcus had connected dots that Anna had been desperate to keep separate. As she watched him guide his mother toward the exit, Anna realized that her carefully maintained anonymity had just shattered completely. Marcus Blackwood wasn't just curious about her anymore. He was investigating. Anna's hands shook as she counted her tips at the end of the night, Marcus's parting words echoing in her mind like a warning bell. Paris. How had he known about Paris? She'd been so careful to bury that part of her life, to become someone completely different from the woman who had once negotiated million-dollar deals in boardrooms overlooking the Seine. "You okay, girl?" Sarah appeared beside her, concern creasing her weathered features. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," Anna lied, shoving the crumpled bills into her purse. "Just tired. That Blackwood guy really had you rattled. What was all that hand-waving about?" Anna forced a smile. "His mother is deaf. I was just taking her compliments to the chef. Since when do you know sign language?" The question was casual, but Anna caught the underlying curiosity. She'd worked so hard to blend in, to be unremarkable. One conversation with Marcus had undone months of careful invisibility. "I picked up a few things in college," Anna said, hoping her voice sounded more casual than she felt. "Nothing fancy." Sarah's expression suggested she wasn't entirely convinced, but she let it drop. "Well, whatever you did, you made an impression." He left a $200 tip. Anna's stomach dropped. "What?" $200 for a 30-minute dinner. Sarah's eyes gleamed with a mixture of envy and suspicion. Rich guys don't tip like that unless they're planning to come back for more than just the salmon. The implication in Sarah's tone made Anna's skin crawl. "It's not like that. Honey, I've been working restaurants for 20 years. It's always like that with men like him. Just be careful, okay? Guys with that kind of money don't play by the same rules as the rest of us." Anna nodded. But Sarah's warning felt like closing the barn door after the horses had already escaped. Marcus Blackwood wasn't interested in her the way Sarah thought. He was interested in her secrets, and that was infinitely more dangerous. The subway ride to her studio apartment in Queens felt longer than usual, every shadow seeming to hide potential threats. Anna had spent the last 2 years looking over her shoulder, waiting for David Chen to finish what he'd started. Her ex-fiancé had been methodical in his destruction of her life. First her reputation, then her career, finally her finances. The only thing that had saved her from complete ruin was her ability to disappear. But if Marcus started digging into her background, how long before David realized she wasn't as destroyed as he'd believed? How long before he decided to finish the job? Anna's phone buzzed as she climbed the 3 flights to her apartment. "Unknown number. Hope you don't mind. I got your number from the restaurant's HR department. This is Marcus Blackwood. I wanted to thank you for being so kind to my mother tonight. She hasn't stopped talking about you." Anna stared at the message, her heart hammering against her ribs. HR department. Of course. Men like Marcus didn't ask for permission. They simply took what they wanted. The casual violation of her privacy should have made her angry, but instead, it filled her with bone-deep terror. She started to type a polite response, then deleted it. Started again, deleted again. Finally, she turned off her phone without responding at all. Her apartment was exactly what someone would expect for a waitress in Queens. Small, sparse, furnished with cast-offs and clearance items. But hidden beneath her mattress was a lockbox containing her real treasures, a Columbia MBA, a CPA license, and documents proving ownership of patents that David had stolen along with everything else. Anna pulled out her laptop, a relic from her previous life that she'd managed to hide from the creditors. Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard before typing in the search terms she'd avoided for 2 years. David Chen and Pinnacle Financial. The results made her stomach lurch. David's company had grown exponentially since her exile, built on the foundation of her stolen work. But it was the recent news that made her blood run cold. Pinnacle Financial announces merger with Blackwood Industries. Marcus Blackwood, David Chen, partners. Anna's hands flew to her mouth, stifling the scream that wanted to escape. It couldn't be a coincidence. David was many things. Cruel, calculating, utterly without conscience, but he wasn't careless. If he was partnering with Marcus, it was for a reason. Had he somehow discovered where she was? Was Marcus's sudden interest in her part of some elaborate plan to finish what David had started? Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Marcus. I know you're probably tired, but I can't stop thinking about our conversation. Would you have dinner with me tomorrow? Somewhere we can actually talk. Anna stared at the message until the words blurred together. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to disappear again before whatever web David was spinning could trap her. But running required money she didn't have, and she was tired of being afraid. More than that, she was tired of being invisible. Against every rational thought in her head, Anna typed back, I work tomorrow night, but I'm free for lunch. The response came immediately. Perfect. I'll pick you up at noon. Wear something comfortable. I have a feeling we're going to be doing a lot of talking. Anna set her phone aside and buried her face in her hands. She was either about to make the biggest mistake of her life or finally take the first step toward reclaiming it. Either way, there was no going back now. The next morning brought a text message that made Anna question her sanity all over again. Change of plans. Meet me at the Columbia University campus, the steps of Low Library. I want to see where you studied. Anna's blood turned to ice. Columbia. He was already investigating her background, already connecting dots she'd tried desperately to erase. The casual mention of her alma mater felt like a trap closing around her. But what choice did she have? Running would only confirm his suspicions, and she was tired of living like a ghost. Anna dressed carefully in the one outfit she'd salvaged from her previous life, a simple black dress that had cost more than she now made in 2 months. It felt strange against her skin, like wearing a costume from a play she'd forgotten how to perform. The campus was alive with the energy of students rushing between classes, their faces bright with the kind of optimism Anna remembered feeling once upon a time. She found Marcus exactly where he'd said he'd be, sitting on the library steps with 2 coffee cups and an expression of barely contained curiosity. He looked different in the daylight, younger somehow, less intimidating. His dark hair caught the autumn sunlight, and he'd traded his expensive suit for dark jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Anna's monthly rent, but looked effortlessly casual. You found me, he said, standing to offer her one of the coffee cups. I wasn't sure you'd come. I almost didn't, Anna admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. It was from the expensive place near campus, she realized, not the usual diner brew she'd grown accustomed to. But you did. Why? The question was asked lightly, but Anna caught the underlying intensity. Everything about Marcus suggested a man accustomed to getting answers, to solving puzzles. She was just his latest mystery to unravel. Because I'm tired of running from my past, she said, surprising herself with the honesty. Marcus's expression shifted, becoming almost gentle. Are you running from something specific or just running in general? What makes you think I'm running at all? Anna, you're 24 years old with a Columbia education and you're working as a waitress in Manhattan. You speak multiple languages, you understand fine wine, and yesterday you corrected my pronunciation of a French word under your breath. Either you're running from something, or you're researching a very elaborate character for a novel. Anna nearly choked on her coffee. You heard that? I hear everything. Occupational hazard of being in business. You learn to notice details other people miss. Marcus settled back down on the steps, gesturing for her to join him. So, what's the story? Bad breakup? Family scandal? Student loans the size of a small country's national debt? His tone was light, almost joking, but Anna could see the sharp intelligence behind his gray eyes. He was giving her an opening to tell him a version of the truth, to control the narrative before he uncovered it himself. All of the above, Anna said finally, settling beside him with careful distance between them. Plus some creative financial planning by someone I trusted. Someone stole from you. It wasn't a question, and the matter-of-fact way he said it made something tight in Anna's chest loosen slightly. No judgment, no pity, just acknowledgement of a fact. Someone stole everything from me, Anna corrected. My work, my reputation, my future. I'm not just running from debt, Marcus. I'm running from the person who destroyed my entire life and convinced everyone that I deserved it. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his fingers wrapped around his coffee cup. David Chen, he said finally. Anna's cup slipped from her nerveless fingers, coffee splashing across the stone steps. How do you? Because I know David Chen very well, Marcus said quietly. And if he's the one who did this to you, then we have a problem. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Anna grabbed Marcus's arm without thinking, her fingernails digging into the expensive cashmere. You know him? How do you know him? Marcus looked down at her hand on his arm, then back up to her face. Anna, David Chen is my business partner. We're about to close the biggest deal of both our careers. The words hit Anna like physical blows. Of course David would find a way to insert himself back into her life just when she was starting to feel safe. Of course he would use someone like Marcus, someone she was actually starting to trust, as his weapon. This is a setup, Anna whispered, releasing Marcus's arm and starting to stand. This whole thing, the restaurant, your mother, the interest in my background, he sent you. No. Marcus caught her wrist, his grip firm but not painful. Anna, I swear to you, David has no idea I'm here. I don't know what he did to you, but this, us talking, this has nothing to do with him. I don't believe you. Then let me prove it. Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolling through his contacts. I'm going to call him right now. I'm going to tell him I met someone who went to Colombia, someone who knows him. Watch his reaction. Anna wanted to run, but something in Marcus's expression held her frozen. He pressed the call button and put the phone on speaker. Marcus! David's voice filled the space between them, as smooth and charming as Anna remembered. Perfect timing. I was just reviewing the merger documents. Everything looks… David, quick question. I met someone yesterday who says they know you from business school. Anna Martinez? Linguistics background, worked in finance for a while? The silence that followed was deafening. Anna could practically feel David's shock radiating through the phone connection. Anna Martinez. That name doesn't ring a bell. Should it? The lie came so easily, so smoothly, that Anna felt nauseated. 2 years of her life, 2 years of love and trust and shared dreams, and David could dismiss her existence without even a pause. Maybe I misunderstood, Marcus said, his eyes never leaving Anna's face. She seemed pretty sure she knew you. Said you worked together on some financial projects. You know how it is, Marcus. Business school creates a lot of casual connections. Maybe we were in a study group together or something. I honestly can't place her. Anna made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. A study group. 3 years of partnership, 2 years of engagement, and David was reducing their relationship to a casual study group. Right. Well, if you remember anything, let me know. I'll talk to you later about the Steinberg contracts. Of course. And Marcus? Be careful about people claiming to know me from the past. You'd be surprised how many people try to use fake connections to get close to successful men like yourself. The call ended, leaving Anna and Marcus sitting in stunned silence. Fake connections, Anna repeated numbly. That's what our engagement was, apparently. A fake connection. Marcus was staring at his phone like it had personally offended him. You were engaged to David Chen. For 2 years. We were business partners for 3 years before that. Anna felt disconnected from her own voice, like she was listening to someone else tell her story. We built Pinnacle Financial together. Every algorithm, every client strategy, every innovation that made the company successful. That was my work, my ideas. And he stole it all. He did more than steal it. He made sure everyone believed I was the one stealing from him. Falsified documents, manipulated financial records, convinced our clients that I was embezzling. By the time I realized what was happening, he'd already filed charges against me and frozen all my accounts. Marcus's jaw was clenched so tight Anna could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. The charges didn't stick, obviously, or you'd be in prison. They didn't stick because David dropped them at the last minute, said he didn't want to ruin my life over a misunderstanding. Made himself look magnanimous while ensuring that everyone still believed I was guilty. Who drops theft charges against someone unless they're absolutely certain the person is guilty but they're feeling charitable? That's… Marcus ran a hand through his hair, displacing the careful styling. That's diabolical. That's David. Anna laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. And now he's your business partner, so I guess the question is, what are you going to do about it? Marcus looked at her for a long moment, his gray eyes unreadable. Then he stood up and extended his hand to her. I'm going to find out the truth, he said simply. And then I'm going to make sure David Chen pays for what he did to you. The words should have filled Anna with hope, but all she felt was weary resignation. Men like David didn't pay for their crimes. They profited from them. And men like Marcus, no matter how sincere they seemed, always chose money over justice when the moment of truth arrived. But when she looked up at his outstretched hand, something in his expression made her chest tighten with an emotion she'd thought David had killed forever. Hope. Against her better judgment, Anna took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. Why? She asked quietly. Why would you risk a business deal to help someone you barely know? Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied her face with an intensity that made her feel exposed, like he could see straight through all her carefully constructed defenses. Because, he said finally, I've spent my entire life surrounded by people who want something from me. And yesterday, for the first time in years, I met someone who just wanted to be kind to my mother. Someone who didn't even know who I was, who had no agenda except basic human decency. He paused, his thumb brushing across her knuckles in a gesture that sent heat shooting up her arm. And because David Chen just lied to my face about knowing you, which means everything you've told me is probably true, and everything he's told me is probably a lie. Anna felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. When was the last time someone had believed her without proof, without documentation, without endless explanations? What if you're wrong? She whispered. What if I'm the liar? Marcus smiled, and the expression transformed his entire face. Then I guess I'm about to make a very expensive mistake. But something tells me that's not the case. He started walking, still holding her hand, and Anna found herself following. Where are we going? To my office. I want to show you something. Marcus, I can't. People will see your reputation. Anna. He stopped walking and turned to face her fully. I don't care about my reputation. I care about the truth. And I have a feeling that the truth about David Chen is going to be very, very interesting. As they walked across campus together, Anna caught glimpses of their reflection in building windows. The billionaire and the waitress, their lives intersecting in ways that should have been impossible. But for the first time in 2 years, Anna felt like she might be more than just a victim of David's ambition. She felt like she might be someone worth fighting for. Marcus's office occupied the entire top floor of a gleaming tower in Midtown, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of Manhattan. Anna tried not to gawk as they walked through the reception area, where assistants in designer suits moved with quiet efficiency, and everything from the furniture to the artwork screamed old money and careful taste. Mr. Blackwood, his assistant rose as they approached, her professional smile faltering slightly when she saw Anna. You're not scheduled to be in today. Change of plans, Jennifer. Hold my calls for the next hour. Marcus guided Anna toward the massive double doors of his private office. And Jennifer, complete confidentiality on this meeting. Of course, sir. Anna felt the weight of Jennifer's curious gaze as they passed, and she was acutely aware of how out of place she looked in her simple black dress amid all this corporate luxury. Marcus's office was even more impressive than the reception area, a masculine space of dark wood and leather that somehow managed to feel warm rather than intimidating. Drink? Marcus moved toward a sidebar that looked like it contained bottles worth more than Anna's annual salary. I'm fine, thank you. Anna remained standing near the door, suddenly unsure why she'd agreed to come here. Marcus, what exactly are you hoping to accomplish? Even if everything I've told you is true, David is still your business partner. You can't just... Can't what? Hold him accountable for his actions? Marcus poured himself 2 fingers of what looked like very expensive scotch. Anna, if David Chen destroyed your life for his own profit, then he's exactly the kind of person I don't want as a partner. But the money, there's always another deal. Marcus settled into one of the leather chairs facing his desk and gestured for Anna to join him. There's not always another chance to do the right thing. Anna perched on the edge of the opposite chair, her entire body tense with nervous energy. You say that now, but when you see the numbers involved, when your board starts asking questions, my board works for me, not the other way around. Marcus's tone was mild, but Anna caught the steel underneath. And the numbers don't matter if they're built on fraud. He leaned forward, his gray eyes intense. Tell me about the patents, Anna. David's company has registered 17 patents in the last 2 years, all related to algorithmic trading and risk assessment. How many of those did you develop? Anna's breath caught. How did you? Because I've been reviewing Pinnacle's assets as part of our due diligence, and something about the filing dates bothered me. 17 patents, all filed within 6 months of each other, all supposedly developed by David's team. Marcus pulled out a tablet and scrolled through several documents. But when I looked at David's educational background, his previous work history, nothing suggested he had the technical expertise to develop this kind of sophisticated financial modeling. Anna felt like the room was spinning. You investigated him? I investigate all my potential partners. The question is, why didn't I find any mention of you in the company's history? Marcus's voice was gentle, but his questions were surgical in their precision. If you were truly a partner for 3 years, if you contributed to the development of these technologies, there should be records. Incorporation documents, partnership agreements, employee records. Because David erased me. Anna's voice came out barely above a whisper. After he filed the charges, after he convinced everyone I was a thief, he had my name removed from everything. Partnership agreements were rewritten to show that I was only ever an employee. Patent applications were amended to remove my name from the inventor credits. He made it look like I never existed. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his fingers steepled in front of his face. That level of systematic documentation fraud. Anna, that's not just unethical, that's criminal. Good luck proving it. David is very thorough and he has very expensive lawyers. So do I. Marcus reached for his phone. Jennifer, get me Charles Morrison at Morrison, Webb and Associates. Yes, I know it's Saturday. Tell him it's urgent. Anna shot to her feet. Marcus, no, you can't. This will destroy your deal. Good. Marcus's voice was flat, final. If this deal is built on stolen intellectual property, then it needs to be destroyed. You don't understand what you're risking, and you don't understand what I'm worth. Marcus set his phone aside and stood to face her. Anna, I could lose this entire deal and 10 more like it and still have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. What I can't afford to lose is my integrity. The simple statement hit Anna like a physical blow. When was the last time someone had chosen principles over profit? When was the last time someone had risked anything real to defend her? Why? She asked, the word barely audible. Why are you doing this? Marcus moved closer, close enough that Anna could see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes, could smell the subtle cologne that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Because yesterday you could have simply taken my mother's compliments to the chef and walked away. Instead, you spent 10 minutes talking to her about her travels, asking about her experiences, treating her like a person instead of an inconvenience. He paused, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. Because you speak 5 languages, but you're serving wine for tips. Because you have a Columbia MBA, but you're worried about whether your boss thinks you're more trouble than you're worth. Because everything about you suggests someone who's been systematically diminished by people who should have valued you. Anna felt tears threatening again. You're going to regret this. When the lawyers start asking questions, when your board wants explanations, when David starts fighting back, let me worry about David. Marcus reached out slowly, giving Anna time to pull away, and brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. The question is, are you ready to fight back? The touch was gentle, almost reverent, and Anna found herself leaning into it despite every rational thought in her head. I don't know how anymore. He took everything, Marcus. My work, my reputation, my confidence. I don't even know who I am without all of that. I know who you are. Marcus's other hand came up to frame her face, his touch warm against her skin. You're someone who spent 3 years building a company from nothing. Someone who developed technology advanced enough to make David Chen willing to commit fraud to steal it. Someone who lost everything and still found the grace to be kind to a lonely old woman in a restaurant. His thumbs traced across her cheekbones, and Anna felt something inside her chest crack open, something that had been frozen solid for 2 years. You're someone worth fighting for, Anna Martinez. The question is, do you believe that? Anna stared up at him, This impossible man who was willing to risk millions of dollars for someone he'd known for 2 days. Everything about the situation was insane. The timing, the circumstances, the way her heart was racing from his touch. But for the first time in 2 years, Anna felt like herself again. Not the diminished, frightened woman David had created, but the person she'd been before. Intelligent, capable, worth defending. "I want to believe it," she whispered. "Then let me prove it to you." Before Anna could ask what he meant, Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his expression hardened. "What is it?" Anna asked. "Text from David. He wants to move up our meeting to Monday, says he has some exciting new developments to discuss." Anna felt ice form in her stomach. "Marcus, you have to be careful. If he even suspects that you know about me, he won't. Because as far as David Chen knows, I'm just another greedy businessman interested in his profit margins." Marcus's smile was sharp, predatory. He has no idea what's coming. Anna wanted to warn him again, to explain just how dangerous David could be when cornered. But the determination in Marcus's eyes reminded her of something she'd almost forgotten. What it felt like to have someone in her corner. Someone willing to fight her battles alongside her. "What do you need me to do?" she asked quietly. Marcus's expression softened. "I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" Trust. The word that David had weaponized against her. That she'd sworn never to give to anyone again. But looking into Marcus's gray eyes, Anna felt something she hadn't experienced in 2 years. The tentative beginning of faith. "Yes," she said, and meant it. "I can do that." Marcus's smile was like sunrise after the longest night. "Good. Because Monday morning, David Chen is going to discover that his past has finally caught up with him." As Marcus pulled her into his arms, Anna allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, justice wasn't as dead as she'd believed. And if it was, at least she wouldn't be facing David's wrath alone this time. For the first time in 2 years, Anna Martinez was no longer running. She was ready to fight back. Monday morning arrived with the kind of gray, overcast sky that seemed to mirror Anna's mood as she sat in the coffee shop across from Marcus's building, watching the entrance through rain-streaked windows. He'd insisted she stay away from the office during his meeting with David, but she couldn't bring herself to go home and wait helplessly while her future was decided by 2 men in expensive suits. Her phone buzzed. "Meeting starts in 10 minutes. Remember, whatever happens, David doesn't know you're involved. Stay safe." Anna's hands trembled as she typed back, "Be careful. He's more dangerous than you think." The response came immediately. "I know, but so am I." Anna stared at the message, trying to draw comfort from Marcus's confidence. But she knew David in ways Marcus couldn't imagine. Knew how he could twist the truth, how he could make victims look like villains and monsters look like heroes. She'd watched him destroy other people's lives with the same calculating precision he'd used on her. 43 floors above her, Marcus Blackwood was about to discover just how thoroughly David Chen had played them all. Marcus straightened his tie and checked his reflection in the conference room's floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything had to be perfect. His appearance, his demeanor, his questions, his... David could never suspect that this was anything more than routine due diligence. "Mr. Blackwood?" Jennifer's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Chen has arrived. Send him in." The conference room doors opened, and David Chen walked in with the kind of confident stride that belonged to a man who believed he owned the world. He was shorter than Marcus had remembered, with perfectly styled black hair and a smile that seemed genuine, until you looked closely at his eyes. "Marcus, good to see you." David extended his hand with practiced warmth. "Thanks for moving this up. I know your schedule is insane." "Not a problem." Marcus shook the offered hand, noting the firm grip, the expensive watch, the manicured nails. Everything about David screamed success, competence, trustworthiness. "Coffee? Please." "So, I've been thinking about our timeline, and I believe we can accelerate the merger by at least 6 weeks. My team has identified some additional assets that weren't in the original proposal." Marcus poured coffee from the silver service, his movements deliberately casual. "Additional assets? Intellectual property mainly. Some proprietary algorithms that we've been developing internally." David accepted the cup with a grateful nod. "I wanted to run the numbers by you before we involve the lawyers." "I appreciate that." Marcus settled into his chair. Every muscle in his body coiled with tension he was determined not to show. Tell me about these algorithms. Are they related to the risk assessment protocols you mentioned last month? David's smile widened. Exactly. Revolutionary stuff, really. Predictive modeling that can identify market patterns up to 18 months in advance. It's going to revolutionize how we approach portfolio management. Impressive. Your team developed these in-house? Absolutely. My lead researcher is brilliant. PhD from MIT. Years of experience in quantitative analysis. We've been working on this technology for over 3 years. Marcus nodded thoughtfully, making notes on the legal pad in front of him. And this researcher, they're comfortable with the merger, no concerns about intellectual property rights, patent disputes, that sort of thing. None at all. Clean development chain, all work done under company contract. My legal team has been very thorough about documentation. The lies came so smoothly, so confidently, that Marcus felt a cold rage building in his chest. Anna had been right. David was a master manipulator, capable of rewriting history without even breaking stride. That's excellent. You know how important clean IP chains are in deals this size. Marcus set down his pen and leaned back. I have to ask, though, 3 years of development seems like a significant investment for a company Pinnacle's size. How did you fund the research and development? David's smile flickered for just a moment, so briefly that Marcus almost missed it. Initial funding came from private investors. Then we reinvested profits as the technology proved viable. Smart money management. And your lead researcher, the MIT PhD, they've been with you the entire 3 years? Oh, longer than that. Academic background is impressive, but real-world application is what matters. We've built something truly special together. Marcus felt sick. Every word out of David's mouth was a calculated distortion of the truth, a theft not just of Anna's work, but of her very existence. The casual way he referred to their partnership, while erasing her completely, was breathtaking in its cruelty. I'd love to meet this researcher. Always interested in the minds behind the innovation. David's pause was barely perceptible. Unfortunately, he's in Singapore right now, working on implementation with our Asian partners. Very hands-on approach, you understand. Brilliant, but not much for corporate meetings. Of course, well, when he returns, I'd appreciate an introduction. Marcus reached for his coffee, using the movement to study David's expression. In the meantime, I'd love to review the development documentation, timeline, methodology, testing protocols. My technical team will want to understand the architecture before we finalize terms. Naturally, I'll have my assistant prepare a comprehensive package. David pulled out his phone, fingers flying over the screen. Should have everything to you by end of week. Marcus nodded, making another note. Perfect. And David? I appreciate your transparency about the additional assets. Trust is the foundation of any successful partnership. Absolutely. David's smile was radiant with what appeared to be genuine warmth. Honesty in business isn't just ethical, it's profitable. Lies have a way of catching up with you eventually. The irony was so thick Marcus could taste it. Couldn't agree more. They spent another 30 minutes reviewing financial projections and merger timelines, David painting a picture of exponential growth and market dominance that would have been compelling if Marcus hadn't known it was built on theft and fraud. When David finally left, his handshake was firm, his demeanor confident, his promises elaborate. Marcus waited until he heard the elevator doors close before pulling out his phone. Call Charles Morrison. Now. Anna was on her 3rd cup of coffee when her phone rang. Marcus's name on the screen made her heart skip. How did it go? She asked without preamble. Exactly as you predicted. He lied about everything. The development timeline, the research team, the funding sources. And Anna? He's claiming that his lead researcher is a man with a PhD from MIT. Anna's laugh was bitter. Let me guess, this mysterious researcher is conveniently unavailable for meetings? In Singapore, apparently. Very hands-on, but not much for corporate environments. How convenient. Anna closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight of David's manipulations. Did he seem suspicious about your questions? Not at all. He was practically glowing with what he clearly thought was his own cleverness. Marcus's voice carried an edge of disgust. Anna, I've met some unscrupulous people in my career, but the casual way he erased your existence, it's sociopathic. I tried to warn you. You did. And you were right about everything. There was a pause. Then Marcus's voice became gentler. How are you holding up? Anna looked around the coffee shop, at the normal people living normal lives, unaware that their simple Monday morning was the most surreal experience of her recent memory. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. David doesn't make mistakes, Marcus. If he's being this cavalier about the lies, it's because he thinks he's already won. What do you mean? I mean, he's planning something. David doesn't just react to threats, he anticipates them and neutralizes them before they become problems. Anna felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain outside. Marcus, what if he knows? What if this whole thing is some elaborate trap? That's impossible. There's no way he could know we've been in contact. Are you sure? Think about it. You ask him about someone from Colombia, someone with a linguistics background who claims to know him. Then, 3 days later, you're suddenly asking detailed questions about his development team and intellectual property chains. That's a hell of a coincidence. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. You think he's figured out that you're the Colombia connection? I think David Chen doesn't believe in coincidences any more than you do. Shit. Marcus's voice was tight with worry. Anna, where are you right now? Coffee shop across from your building. Why? Because if you're right, if David has figured out our connection, then you're not safe. He destroyed your life once when you were an inconvenience. What do you think he'll do if he sees you as a direct threat? Anna felt ice forming in her stomach. She'd been so focused on the possibility of justice, on the hope of vindication, that she hadn't fully considered what David might do to protect himself. And David had never been one to leave loose ends. Marcus, I should disappear. Tonight. Leave the city, change my name again. No. Marcus's voice was firm. Running didn't work the first time, and it won't work now. David will just follow you, and next time you won't have anyone watching your back. Then what do you suggest? I suggest we force his hand. Make him come to us instead of letting him hunt you down on his timeline. Anna's grip tightened on her phone. That's suicide. You don't understand what he's capable of, and you don't understand what I'm capable of. Marcus's tone carried a confidence that was both reassuring and terrifying. Anna, I didn't build a billion-dollar company by backing down from fights. And I sure as hell am not going to let David Chen intimidate the woman I... He stopped abruptly and Anna's heart stuttered. The woman you what? She whispered. The woman I care about, Marcus said quietly. More than I should, considering we've known each other for 3 days, but there it is. Anna felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. Marcus, I know it's crazy. I know the timing is terrible and the circumstances are impossible, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since Saturday night. The way you talked to my mother, the way you stood up to me when I was being an ass, the strength it took to rebuild your life after David destroyed it. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're brilliant and kind and stronger than you think you are. I know you deserve justice, and I know I want to be the one to help you get it. Marcus paused. And I know that I'm not letting David Chen hurt you again. Anna wiped away a tear, amazed that she had any left after 2 years of crying. What if we can't prove what he did? What if his lawyers are better than yours? What if... Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But Anna, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Trust. The word that had become her enemy. The concept that David had poisoned so thoroughly that Anna had thought she'd never be able to embrace it again. But sitting in this ordinary coffee shop listening to Marcus promise to fight for her, Anna felt something shift in her chest. Maybe trust wasn't about never being hurt again. Maybe it was about believing that someone was worth the risk of being hurt. Yes, she said softly. I trust you. Good. Because I have a plan. 20 minutes later, Anna was back in Marcus's office listening to him outline a strategy that was either brilliant or completely insane. You want me to call David directly? Anna stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Marcus, that's exactly what he's expecting. He's probably already planning how to use any contact from me against us. That's what makes it perfect. Marcus was pacing behind his desk, his energy crackling with determination. He expects you to hide, to stay in the shadows while other people fight your battles. The last thing he's prepared for is you walking straight into his office and demanding answers. Because it's suicide. Because it's unexpected. Marcus stopped pacing and fixed her with an intense stare. Anna, think about it. For 2 years you've been running from David, letting him control the narrative. What if you stopped running? What if you took control back? Anna felt a flutter of something that might have been excitement mixing with her terror. Even if I wanted to confront him, which I don't, what would be the point? He'll just lie, manipulate, turn it around on me like he always does. Not if you're not going in alone. Marcus pulled out his phone. I'm going to call David right now. I'm going to tell him that my technical team has identified some inconsistencies in his IP documentation, and I need to meet with his lead researcher to clarify a few points. He'll make excuses. The researcher's in Singapore, remember? Then I'll tell him it's urgent enough to bring the researcher back. I'll make it clear that the deal depends on it. Marcus's smile was sharp. Trust me, David won't risk losing this merger over a simple meeting. Anna felt her pulse quicken. And then? Then you walk into that meeting as Dr. Anna Martinez, independent consultant specializing in algorithmic trading systems. Someone I've hired to verify the authenticity of his intellectual property. The audacity of the plan took Anna's breath away. He'll recognize me immediately. Of course he will. And he'll be so shocked that he'll reveal more than he intends to. David's strength is his ability to control situations, to manipulate from the shadows. But put him face to face with someone he thought he'd destroyed, someone who's clearly not the broken victim he expected. He'll make mistakes. Anna could see the logic, but the thought of facing David again made her feel sick. What if he refuses to meet? What if he calls security? What if he tries to have me arrested? On what charges? Being in a business meeting? Anna, you're not a fugitive. You were never even formally charged with anything. David's power over you exists only as long as you believe it does. Marcus moved around the desk to stand in front of her, his hands settling gently on her shoulders. I know you're scared. I know the last time you trusted someone it ended in disaster. But this time is different. How? Because this time you're not alone. This time you have someone who believes you. Someone who's willing to fight for you. This time, you have me. Anna looked up into his gray eyes and saw something that made her chest tighten with emotion. Not pity, not charity, but genuine care. Respect. The kind of partnership she'd thought she'd had with David, but real this time. What if we're wrong? She whispered. What if this destroys your company, your reputation, everything you've worked for? Marcus's hands moved to cup her face, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. Then I'll rebuild. But Anna, I can't rebuild my integrity if I walk away from this. I can't look at myself in the mirror if I let David Chen win. His voice dropped to something almost intimate. And I can't lose you now that I've found you. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that Anna wasn't sure she was ready to handle. But the sincerity in Marcus's expression, the gentle way he was touching her, the absolute certainty in his voice, it all combined to break through the last of her resistance. Okay, she said quietly. Let's do it. Marcus's smile was like sunrise. You're sure? I'm terrified, but yes, I'm sure. Anna took a deep breath, feeling something shift inside her chest. It's time to stop running. Marcus pulled her into his arms then, holding her tight against his chest, and Anna allowed herself to draw strength from his warmth, his confidence, his absolute faith that justice was possible. Tomorrow, she would face David Chen for the first time in 2 years. Tomorrow, she would either reclaim her life or watch it be destroyed all over again. But tonight, for the first time since her world had collapsed, Anna Martinez felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The Pinnacle financial offices occupied 3 floors of a glass tower in the financial district, all clean lines and modern efficiency designed to project success and stability. Anna stood on the sidewalk across the street, staring up at the building that had once represented all her dreams, now turned into the monument to her nightmares. Second thoughts? Marcus appeared beside her, 2 coffee cups in hand. About 100 of them. Anna accepted the coffee gratefully, kneading the warmth against the October chill. I used to love this building. David and I picked it together, spent hours planning how we'd design the offices, talking about the company we were going to build. And you did build it. The fact that he stole credit doesn't change that. Anna looked at Marcus, taking in the expensive suit, the confident posture, the way he seemed to command space just by existing. Are you sure about this plan? Once we walk in there, there's no going back. I'm sure. Marcus's voice was steady, calm. The question is, are you ready? Anna thought about the woman she'd been 2 years ago. Confident, successful, naive enough to believe that hard work and talent were enough to protect her from people like David. Then she thought about the woman she'd become, scared, diminished, invisible. But standing here with Marcus, feeling his absolute faith in her, Anna realized she didn't want to be either of those women anymore. She wanted to be someone new, someone who had been broken but had learned how to rebuild herself stronger. "I'm ready," she said, and meant it. They crossed the street together, Marcus's hand warm and reassuring on the small of her back. The lobby was exactly as Anna remembered. Marble floors, abstract art, the kind of understated luxury that whispered rather than shouted about money. The security guard at the front desk looked up as they approached, his expression shifting to professional attention when he recognized Marcus. "Mr. Blackwood." "Good afternoon, sir." "Good afternoon, James. We're here to see David Chen. He's expecting us." "Of course, sir. 32nd floor. The elevators are—" "I remember," Anna said quietly, then caught herself. James was looking at her with puzzled recognition, clearly trying to place where he'd seen her before. "Dr. Martinez is consulting on our merger," Marcus said smoothly. "Intellectual property verification." "Of course, have a good meeting." As they rode the elevator up, Anna felt her heart hammering against her ribs. The familiar numbers climbing on the display, 20, 25, 30, each one bringing her closer to a confrontation she'd spent 2 years avoiding. "Breathe," Marcus said quietly, his hand finding hers. "Remember, you belong here. This company exists because of your work." The elevator doors opened onto the familiar reception area, all glass and chrome and carefully curated success. Behind the reception desk sat a young woman Anna didn't recognize. David had clearly replaced the entire staff after Anna's departure. "Mr. Blackwood." The receptionist stood with practiced smile. "Mr. Chen is waiting for you in the main conference room." They followed her down a hallway lined with framed articles about Pinnacle's success, awards for innovation, photos of David at various industry events. Anna's stomach clenched as she realized that in 2 years, David had built an entire mythology around himself, a carefully crafted narrative in which he had never existed. The conference room doors opened, and there he was. David Chen looked exactly the same, perfectly styled black hair, expensive suit, that practiced smile that had once made Anna's heart skip. He was standing at the head of the conference table, clearly positioned to project authority and control, and for a moment Anna felt herself shrinking back into the scared, diminished woman she'd been. Then Marcus's hand pressed against her back, warm and steady, and Anna remembered who she was fighting for. "Marcus!" David's voice was warm, welcoming, giving no sign that anything was amiss. "Right on time. And you must be Dr. Martinez." David's eyes met Anna's across the room, and she saw the exact moment when recognition hit. His face went completely blank for perhaps 3 seconds, long enough for Anna to see shock, calculation, and something that might have been fear flicker across his features. Then the mask slammed back into place. "I'm sorry," David said, his voice carefully modulated. "Have we met before? You look familiar." "You." The casual dismissal, the pretense that she was a stranger, hit Anna like a physical blow. But instead of the crushing despair she'd expected, she felt something else entirely. Rage. Pure, clean, energizing fury that burned away 2 years of fear and self-doubt. "We've met," Anna said quietly, walking into the room with her head held high. "Though I'm not surprised you don't remember. You always were better at forgetting inconvenient people." David's smile never wavered, but Anna caught the slight tightening around his eyes. "I'm afraid I don't follow." "Anna Martinez," she said clearly, extending her hand in a gesture of mock politeness. "Former partner and co-founder of Pinnacle Financial, though I believe your current version of history has me listed as never existed." The silence that followed was deafening. David stared at Anna's outstretched hand like it might bite him, while Marcus watched the entire exchange with sharp attention. "I think there might be some confusion," David said finally, not taking her hand. "Pinnacle has never had a partner named Anna Martinez." "Really?" Anna pulled out her phone and opened a photo album she'd thought she'd never use again. "Then perhaps you can explain these." She showed him the screen, a photo of David and Anna at Pinnacle's launch party, arms around each other, both grinning at the camera. David's face in the photo was radiant with what had appeared to be genuine love and pride. David glanced at the photo and shrugged. I attend a lot of industry events. I'm sure I've taken pictures with hundreds of people over the years. Anna swiped to the next photo. David and Anna in the office late at night working on code together, her engagement ring clearly visible on her left hand. Then another, David kissing Anna's cheek at what was clearly an intimate dinner, not a business function. Hundreds of people, Anna repeated quietly. Is that what I was to you, David? Just another face in the crowd? I'm sorry, but I really don't know what you're hoping to accomplish here. David turned to Marcus with an expression of professional confusion. Marcus, I'm not sure what this woman has told you, but this woman, Marcus interrupted, his voice deadly quiet, is Dr. Anna Martinez, who holds patents for 17 of the technologies your company claims to have developed. The same technologies you've been trying to sell to me as part of our merger. David's mask slipped for just a moment, and Anna saw real fear flash across his face. That's impossible. All of Pinnacle's intellectual property was developed internally by my team. Your team, Anna repeated. You mean the team of one MIT PhD who's conveniently in Singapore and unavailable for meetings? I don't know what game you're playing here. I'm not playing anything, David. Anna's voice was steady now, strengthened by 2 years of pain that had finally found its purpose. I'm here to collect what you stole from me. David laughed, a sound that was probably meant to convey incredulous amusement but came out strained and artificial. Stole? That's a very serious accusation. Yes, it is. Anna pulled out a tablet and opened a file folder. Would you like to see the original development notes for the risk assessment algorithm? The ones written in my handwriting dated 6 months before you filed the patent? Or perhaps the emails where you asked me to explain the technical specifications because you couldn't understand the code? David's face was beginning to show cracks in its composure. Anyone can forge documents. Anyone can, Anna agreed. But these aren't forgeries. They're backups from my personal cloud storage, complete with metadata showing when they were created, when they were last modified, what device they were created on. She looked directly into David's eyes. Would you like to explain to Marcus why the foundational technology for your company was developed on my personal laptop? This is ridiculous. David turned to Marcus, desperation beginning to creep into his voice. Marcus, surely you can see what this is. Some disgruntled former employee trying to… Former employee? Anna's voice cut through his protestations like a blade. Is that what you're calling it now? David, we were engaged for 2 years. We built this company together. We shared a bed, shared a life, shared dreams about the future we were going to create. She stood up, moving around the table until she was close enough to see the fear in David's eyes. And when you decided you wanted it all for yourself, you didn't just steal my work. You stole my life. You destroyed my reputation, froze my assets, turned everyone against me, and then had the audacity to act like I never existed. You filed fraud charges against me that you knew were false, then dropped them at the last minute to make yourself look magnanimous while ensuring everyone still believed I was guilty. Anna's voice was gaining strength with every word. You rewrote our partnership agreements to make me look like just an employee. You removed my name from patent applications. You erased me, David. David looked between Anna and Marcus, clearly calculating his options. Even if any of that were true, it is true, Marcus said quietly. Every word of it. David's attention snapped to Marcus. You believe her? Marcus, this woman is clearly unstable. She's telling the truth. Marcus pulled out his own tablet, opening it to a document Anna recognized. Because my legal team has spent the last 3 days investigating Pinnacle's intellectual property claims, and guess what we found? David went very still. What do you mean? I mean that the original patent applications tell a very different story than the current ones. Metadata analysis shows that your patents were systematically altered to remove Anna's name as co-inventor. The dates of invention were changed. The technical specifications were rewritten to hide the fact that the work was done on external systems. Marcus stood up, his presence suddenly filling the room with quiet menace. We also found the original partnership agreements, David. The ones that show Anna as an equal partner, not an employee. The ones that were altered 6 months after she left the company. David's face had gone pale. Those are sealed corporate documents. You have no legal right. I have every legal right to investigate the intellectual property I'm considering purchasing. Marcus's voice was like ice. And what I've discovered, is that you're trying to sell me stolen goods. This is insane, David said, but his voice lacked conviction. You're talking about destroying a billion-dollar deal based on the word of a woman who created the technology that makes your company valuable, Anna finished. A woman who trusted you with everything and got betrayed for her faith. David looked trapped, his usual smooth confidence completely shattered. Anna, look, maybe we can work something out. If you feel like you deserve compensation for your contributions. Compensation? Anna's laugh was bitter. David, you don't get to negotiate your way out of theft. You don't get to offer me a settlement for stealing my life's work. Then what do you want? Anna looked at this man who had once been everything to her, who had shared her dreams and her bed and her hopes for the future, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. I want justice, she said simply. I want the world to know who really built Pinnacle Financial. I want my name restored to every patent, every article, every piece of work you've stolen. I want a full accounting of every dollar this company has made using my technology. She paused, her voice dropping to something almost intimate. And I want you to experience what it feels like to lose everything because someone you trusted decided to destroy you. David stared at her in stunned silence, clearly recognizing the woman he'd tried to crush in the strong, determined person standing before him. The deal is off, Marcus said quietly. Effective immediately, and David? I'll be making sure that every potential partner knows exactly what kind of business practices Pinnacle Financial engages in. David shot to his feet, his composure finally cracking completely. You can't do this. The contracts are void due to misrepresentation of assets, Marcus replied calmly. My lawyers are already preparing the documentation. I'll fight this, David said, his voice shaking with rage. I'll destroy both of you. You'll what? Anna stood up, facing David without flinching. Ruin my reputation? Steal my work? Turn everyone against me? You already did all of that, David. You took your best shot, and I survived. She moved closer, close enough to see the fear in his eyes. But this time I'm not alone. This time I have someone who believes me, someone who's willing to fight for the truth. This time, you're the one who's going to lose everything. David looked between Anna and Marcus, his face cycling through rage, desperation, and something that might have been defeat. This isn't over, he said finally. Yes, Anna said quietly. It is. As they walked out of the conference room, leaving David sitting alone at his table, Anna felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she'd been carrying for 2 years. She wasn't the same broken woman who had fled this building in shame and terror. She was someone who had found her strength again, someone who had learned that justice was possible if you were brave enough to fight for it. And she was someone who had found a partner worthy of her trust. 6 months later, Anna stood in the kitchen of Marcus's Tribeca penthouse, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of gold and pink. The newspaper on the counter bore a headline that still made her smile. Pinnacle Financial founder sentenced to 5 years for corporate fraud. Below it, a smaller story. Martinez Technologies announces record profits in first quarter. Still reading about David's downfall? Marcus appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pressing a kiss to her neck. Can you blame me? 2 years of nightmares and now he's the one behind bars. Anna leaned back against Marcus's chest, savoring the warmth and security of his embrace. Sometimes I still can't believe it's real. Believe it. Charles's legal team was very thorough. Marcus's voice carried deep satisfaction. Fraud, theft of intellectual property, corporate malfeasance, filing false financial documents. David won't be bothering anyone for a very long time. Anna turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had changed everything. Any regrets about walking away from the biggest deal of your career? Are you kidding? Marcus's smile was soft, genuine. Walking away from that deal was the best decision I ever made. It led me to something much more valuable. What's that? You, he said simply, and kissed her forehead. Though I have to say, watching you rebuild your company from the ground up has been incredible. Martinez Technologies is going to change the industry. Anna felt a familiar flutter of pride. The last 6 months had been a whirlwind of legal battles, patent restorations, and building a new company from scratch. But with her name cleared and her technology returned to her, Anna had discovered that she was even more capable than she'd realized. Martinez Technologies already had contracts worth millions, and 3 major firms were competing to invest. "We're going to change the industry," Anna corrected. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "You could have. You just needed someone to remind you how strong you are." The soft sincerity in Marcus's voice made Anna's chest tighten with emotion. Even after 6 months, she sometimes couldn't believe that this was her life. Waking up in Marcus's arms, building a company that was truly hers, facing each day without fear or shame. "I have something for you," Marcus said, his tone shifting to something that sounded almost nervous. "It's not my birthday. I know, but there's something I've been wanting to ask you, and I couldn't wait any longer." Anna felt her heart skip as Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught as he dropped to one knee right there in the kitchen, the morning sunlight streaming through the windows and painting everything in soft gold. "Anna Martinez," Marcus said, his voice steady, despite the vulnerability in his eyes. "6 months ago you walked into my life and turned everything upside down. You made me remember why integrity matters more than profit, why truth is worth fighting for, why love is the most important investment anyone can make." He opened the box, revealing a ring that took Anna's breath away. A classic solitaire that was elegant without being ostentatious, beautiful without being showy. Exactly what she would have chosen for herself. "You've taught me that real strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up and becoming someone even better than you were before. You've shown me what it means to fight for what's right, even when the odds are impossible." Marcus paused, his gray eyes shining with emotion. "I know we've only known each other for 6 months. I know it's fast, maybe even crazy. But Anna, I've never been more certain of anything in my life." He took a breath, his voice dropping to something intimate and tender. "I love you. I love your brilliant mind and your generous heart. I love your strength and your vulnerability. I love the way you sign to my mother and the way you make terrible coffee, and the way you get this little crinkle between your eyebrows when you're concentrating on code." Anna felt tears streaming down her face, but they were happy tears, the kind she'd thought she'd forgotten how to cry. "Most of all," Marcus continued, "I love the way you've made me want to be a better man. You've made me believe in partnership that's real, in love that's based on respect and admiration, and genuine care." He looked up at her with absolute sincerity. "Anna Martinez, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that not all partnerships end in betrayal, that love doesn't have to be dangerous?" Anna stared down at this incredible man who had risked everything to fight for her, who had seen her at her most broken and helped her become stronger than she'd ever been. The ring in the box caught the morning light, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the walls. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Marcus. Yes to all of it." Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that were surprisingly steady, then stood and kissed her with a tenderness that made Anna's knees weak. When they broke apart, both of them were crying and laughing at the same time. "I can't believe you proposed to me in your kitchen," Anna said, admiring the way the ring looked on her hand. "I couldn't wait for some fancy restaurant or romantic vacation. I wanted to ask you here, in the space where we've had our best conversations, where you've taught me how to really live instead of just existing." Anna looked around the kitchen that had become so familiar, so much like home, and realized he was right. This was where they'd planned strategy for the legal battles, where they'd celebrated each victory, where they'd learned to trust each other completely. "Besides," Marcus added with a grin, "after everything we've been through, I figured simple and honest was better than elaborate and performative." "Simple and honest," Anna repeated, thinking about how perfectly those words described what they'd built together. "I like that." Marcus pulled her close again, and Anna marveled at how safe she felt in his arms, how right this all seemed. A year ago she'd been hiding in Queens, convinced that her life was over, that trust was impossible, that love was just another word for vulnerability. Now she was engaged to a man who had proven that partnership could be about building each other up instead of tearing each other down, that love could be a source of strength instead of weakness. "So," Marcus said, his voice warm with amusement, "any thoughts on wedding planning? Please tell me you're not going to be one of those brides who wants a year-long engagement and a wedding that costs more than most people's houses." Anna laughed, the sound bubbling up from a place of pure joy. "Actually, I was thinking something small. Family. Close friends. Maybe your mother can teach me some more sign language before the ceremony. She's going to be thrilled. She's been dropping hints about grandchildren since our third date. Grandchildren? Anna raised an eyebrow. We just got engaged 30 seconds ago and you're already thinking about kids? With you? I'm thinking about everything. Kids, grandkids growing old together. The whole beautiful mess of building a life with someone. Marcus's expression grew serious. Anna, I know David hurt you badly. I know trust doesn't come easily anymore. But I want you to know that I'm in this for the long haul. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. Anna felt her heart swell with an emotion so big she could barely contain it. I know, she said softly. I trust you, Marcus. Completely. The words would have terrified her 6 months ago, but now they felt like a gift. To him and to herself. She'd learned that trust wasn't about never being hurt again. It was about choosing to believe that some people were worth the risk, and Marcus Blackwood was definitely worth the risk. Good, Marcus said, kissing her again. Because I have some ideas about our honeymoon that require a significant amount of trust. Oh, really? Anna's eyes sparkled with mischief. What kind of ideas? The kind that involve Paris, champagne, and showing you that not all French connections end in heartbreak. Anna felt a momentary pang at the mention of Paris, the city where she'd once thought she'd build a life with David, where her dreams had first begun to take shape. But looking into Marcus's eyes, she realized that those old dreams had been small, limited by her inability to imagine that someone could love her without trying to diminish her. Paris sounds perfect, she said, meaning it. As long as you promise not to propose again, I don't think my heart can take any more surprises today. Deal, but I reserve the right to surprise you in other ways. What kind of other ways? Marcus's smile was mysterious, full of promises and possibilities. You'll have to trust me. I do, Anna said, and realized she meant it completely. I trust you with everything. As they stood together in the morning light, Anna thought about how far she'd come from the terrified woman hiding in Queens, convinced that her life was over. She'd learned that endings could be beginnings, that losing everything could teach you what was truly valuable, that the worst betrayal could lead to the most authentic love. David Chen had tried to erase her from existence, but instead, he'd forced her to discover who she really was when everything else was stripped away. And who she was, it turned out, was someone strong enough to rebuild, brave enough to fight, and wise enough to recognize real love when she found it. So, Marcus said, his arms tightening around her, ready to start planning the rest of our lives? Anna looked at her engagement ring, sparkling in the morning sunlight, then up at the man who had helped her remember that she was worth fighting for. I'm ready, she said, and for the first time in years she meant it without reservation. The future stretched out before them, bright with possibility and rich with promise, and Anna Martinez, soon to be Anna Blackwood, was finally ready to embrace it all. Outside the windows, the city hummed with life and energy, full of people starting their own new chapters, fighting their own battles, discovering their own strength. Somewhere in a federal prison, David Chen was beginning to understand what it felt like to lose everything. But here, in this kitchen filled with morning light and laughter and love, Anna and Marcus were just beginning to understand what it meant to have everything that truly mattered. And it was more beautiful than either of them had ever dared to dream.
Have you ever felt invisible? Like the world looks right through you, simply because of the uniform you wear. Tonight, we delve into a story that proves the quietest person in the room might just be the most powerful. It's a tale of unimaginable arrogance and a satisfying twist that will have you cheering. We follow a young waitress at one of New York's most exclusive restaurants, a woman who endures the scorn of a billionaire family, the kind of people who believe their money makes them gods. They mock her, humiliate her, and discard her like yesterday's trash, but they have no idea who they're messing with. What happens the next day isn't just karma, it's a corporate takeover. The low melodic hum of conversation was the baseline rhythm of Sterling Steakhouse. It was a sound composed of clinking silverware against porcelain, the gentle slosh of vintage Bordeaux being poured into oversized glasses, and the murmur of multi-million-dollar deals being sealed over dry-aged porterhouse steaks. To most of the patrons who graced its mahogany-paneled walls and plush leather banquettes, the staff were merely extensions of the decor, silent, efficient, and utterly forgettable. For Eva Reyes, this invisibility was both a curse and a tool. For 29 days, she had worn the crisp black uniform with its small silver S embroidered over the heart. She had learned the precise angle at which to present a wine bottle, the exact temperature that constituted a perfect medium rare, and the subtle art of anticipating a need before it was spoken. She tied her dark, wavy hair back so severely it pulled at her temples, a constant, dull ache that reminded her of her purpose. Her hands, once accustomed to turning the pages of dense legal textbooks, were now calloused from carrying heavy trays and polishing endless streams of crystal glasses. Each night she returned to a small fifth-floor walk-up apartment in a less glamorous part of the city, a world away from the A5 Wagyu and Grand Cru she served. She'd soak her aching feet and review the notes she'd taken, not on food orders, but on the soul of the restaurant. She noted the tired eyes of Miguel the dishwasher, who worked 2 jobs to support his family in Ecuador. She saw the forced, brittle smile of Sarah, a veteran waitress who had to swallow her pride when a customer complained that her perfume, a faint scent of drugstore lavender soap, was interfering with the bouquet of his $2,000 wine. She felt the palpable fear emanating from the manager, Mr. Henderson, a man whose spine seemed to dissolve in the presence of a platinum credit card. This was all part of the pact, the strange and final request of a man she had never truly known. Her grandfather, Arthur Sterling, the architect of this culinary empire, had been a ghost in her life. He and her mother had a falling out long before Eva was born, a chasm of pride and misunderstanding that never closed. When he passed away 3 months ago, his lawyers had contacted her with a will that was both a staggering gift and a bizarre trial. Eva, his sole heir, would inherit the entirety of Sterling Restaurant Group, a portfolio worth billions. But there was a condition, a crucible he had designed from beyond the grave. She had to work undetected for 30 days in the flagship Manhattan location. She was to experience the company from its foundation, to understand the weight of a Sterling plate, not as an owner, but as the person who carried it. If she quit, or if her identity was discovered before the 30th day, the entire fortune would be liquidated and donated to a culinary charity. Marcus Thorne, her grandfather's austere lawyer, had called it Arthur's final lesson. He believed the old man wanted her to earn her legacy, to understand the value of the people who made the Sterling name shine. Eva suspected it was also a final posthumous test of the daughter he'd lost, a test to see if her child possessed the grit he prized above all else. So she became a ghost within her own inheritance, observing, learning, and feeling the daily abrasions of the service industry. She discovered a quiet strength she didn't know. She had a deep well of patience she drew from every time a customer snapped their fingers at her, or spoke to the man she was with instead of her. On this particular evening, the 29th day, the restaurant was buzzing with its usual high-powered energy. The air was thick with the scent of seared meat, truffle oil, and expensive cologne. Eva moved through the labyrinth of tables with practiced grace, her mind a whirlwind of orders, table numbers, and quiet observations. She felt a strange sense of melancholy. Tomorrow this chapter would end. Tomorrow she would trade her apron for a seat at the head of a boardroom table. She wasn't sure how she felt about it. A part of her had come to respect the relentless, unglamorous work, to admire the resilience of her colleagues. Table 7 needs a fresh bottle of San Pellegrino, Mr. Henderson hissed as she passed the service station, his brow beaded with sweat. And the Harringtons are on their way. Party of 4. I want you on their table. You're my most polished. Ava's stomach tightened slightly. The name Harrington was spoken with a mixture of reverence and terror among the staff. Richard Harrington was a real estate titan, a piranha in a bespoke suit, known for buying and gutting companies. His family was legendary for their demanding, capricious, and often cruel behavior. They were the kind of wealthy that didn't just expect perfection. They reveled in finding fault with it. "Of course, Mr. Henderson," Ava said, her voice a placid mask. Serving the Harringtons on her last night, it felt like a final exam, a culmination of every condescending glance and impatient sigh she had endured for the past month. As she retrieved the chilled water, she took a deep breath. It was just one more night of being invisible. What she didn't know was that the Harringtons weren't just going to test her patience. They were going to provide the very catalyst she needed to redefine the future of the Sterling Empire. The arrival of the Harrington family was not a quiet entrance, but a conquest. Richard Harrington led the charge, a man in his late 50s with a stony face and eyes that perpetually scanned for weakness. He didn't walk so much as march, his expensive leather shoes making no sound on the plush carpet, as if the very floor was afraid to squeak in his presence. Following him was his wife Eleanor, a woman sculpted by surgeons and draped in diamonds that glittered with cold, predatory light. Her expression was one of permanent, disdainful boredom. Trailing them were their 2 adult children, products of immense privilege and zero perspective. Blake, a young man in his early 20s, wore a smug, dismissive smirk as his uniform. He ran a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair, his gaze sweeping over the other diners with open contempt. His sister Tiffany was glued to her phone, her thumb flicking across the screen as she documented their arrival for her thousands of social media followers, completely oblivious to the real world around her. "Henderson!" Richard barked, not looking at the manager, but at the prime corner booth he intended to occupy. "We're here, the usual table." "Of course, Mr. Harrington. Welcome back." Mr. Henderson stammered, practically bowing. He gestured frantically at Ava. "Your server will be with you momentarily." Ava approached the table, her service smile firmly in place. "Good evening and welcome to Sterling's. My name is Ava, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. May I start you with some water?" Eleanor Harrington looked up from her menu, peering at Ava over the rim of her glasses, as if she were an interesting insect. "We'll have a bottle of the Chateau Margaux, the 05, and make sure it's decanted properly. The last time we were here, the girl nearly bruised it." "Of course, ma'am," Ava replied, making a mental note. Bruising wine wasn't a thing, but arguing the point was not part of her job description. Blake tossed his menu onto the table. "Just get me a whiskey, Macallan 25, 2 ice cubes, not 1, not 3, 2, and don't drown it." "And for you, sir?" Ava asked, turning to Richard. He didn't even look at her. He was speaking to Blake about a hostile takeover he was planning. "We bleed them dry by the second quarter. They won't know what hit them." He waved a dismissive hand in Ava's general direction. "She knows what I have." Ava knew. A particular brand of imported gin, a specific tonic, a single slice of lime, cut to exactly a 1/4-inch thickness. She had studied the files on their regulars. The Harringtons' file was less of a preference sheet and more of a psychological profile in entitlement. The evening descended into a masterclass of condescension. When Ava presented the wine, Eleanor watched her like a hawk, sighing dramatically as Ava poured a taste for Richard. "Do be careful, dear. That bottle is worth more than your rent." Ava simply smiled. "It's a beautiful vintage, ma'am." The rent on her tiny apartment was, in fact, a small fraction of the wine's cost, but the comment was designed to sting, and she refused to give them the satisfaction. They ordered their food with a series of curt, demanding pronouncements. When Ava brought the appetizers, Blake stopped her. He pointed a finger at her uniform. "Is that a smudge?" he asked, his voice loud enough for the adjacent tables to hear. Ava glanced down. There was nothing there. "I don't believe so, sir." "I see a smudge," he insisted, a cruel gleam in his eyes. "It's distracting. Are your uniforms not clean here? For these prices I expect a certain standard. My father expects a certain standard." Mr. Henderson scurried over his face, pale. "Is there a problem, Mr. Harrington?" "Your waitress has a filthy uniform," Blake announced. Ava stood her ground, her voice calm. "My apologies, sir. It must be a trick of the light." Richard finally looked up from his phone, his gaze settling on Ava with icy disinterest. "Just get on with it. The boy's right, though. Details matter. Sterling seems to be slipping." The humiliation was a hot flush on her cheeks, but Ava's expression remained a mask of professional courtesy. She retreated and returned moments later with their soups. As she leaned in to place Tiffany's bowl, the young woman, without looking up from her phone, shifted her arm, abruptly jostling Ava's hand. A few drops of the lobster bisque splashed onto the pristine white tablecloth. "Oh my God!" Tiffany shrieked, as if she'd been physically assaulted. "Look what you did, you clumsy oaf! This is a designer blouse!" It wasn't. The drops were nowhere near her, but the performance had begun. "I am so sorry," Ava said, dabbing at the tiny spots on the cloth with a fresh napkin. "Sorry isn't going to cut it," Eleanor snapped. "This is precisely the kind of incompetence I'm talking about. Where do they find these people?" The main course was the crescendo. Blake had ordered his steak black and blue. It was cooked to perfection, charred on the outside, cool and red on the inside. He cut one piece, chewed it dramatically, and then pushed his plate away. "This is inedible," he declared. "It's overcooked." Ava knew it wasn't. She had watched the chef, a culinary artist named Jean-Pierre, sear it himself. "I can assure you, sir, it's cooked exactly to a black and blue specification." "Are you calling me a liar?" Blake shot back, his voice rising. "Are you the waitress questioning my palate?" "Not at all, sir," Ava said, her patience wearing paper thin. "I am simply stating how the chef prepared it. Would you like me to have him make you another one?" "No." Richard interjected, his voice low and dangerous. "I don't want another one. I want this one taken off the bill, and I want to speak to your manager about your argumentative staff." This was their game, a performance of power to get a free meal and assert their dominance over those they considered their lessers. As Ava cleared the plates, feeling the weight of a dozen pitying and judgmental stares from other tables, Blake intentionally stretched his leg out into the aisle. Ava, balancing a heavy tray, stumbled. She managed to catch herself, but a half-empty water glass tipped, splashing down the front of her apron and trousers. Blake laughed, a loud, braying laugh. "Looks like you're the one with the spill now. Maybe you should be more careful." Eleanor smirked into her wine glass. "Some people just aren't cut out for this kind of work. You know, dear," she said, looking directly at Ava, her voice dripping with false pity, "it's never too late to go to a community college. Find a simple career. Something you can handle." That was it. That was the line. It wasn't the spill or the false accusations, or the blatant rudeness. It was the casual, dismissive swipe at her intelligence, at her potential, at her very worth as a human being. They saw a uniform, not a person. They saw a servant, not a woman who had graduated top of her class from Columbia Law, a woman who had put her own promising career on hold to fulfill a dying man's wish. Ava straightened up the cold water, soaking through her clothes, feeling strangely clarifying. She looked at the four of them, truly looked at them for the first time without the filter of her role. She saw their brittle insecurities, their desperate need to feel superior, the hollow emptiness at the core of their gilded lives. She didn't say a word. She simply gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. She picked up the tray, turned and walked away, the sound of Blake's mocking laughter following her. Back in the sanctuary of the bustling kitchen, she leaned against a cool stainless steel counter and closed her eyes. The anger was a white-hot fire, but she didn't let it consume her. She let it forge her. Her 29 days were over. Her trial by fire was complete, and tomorrow, the Harrington family would learn a very important lesson about the people they deemed invisible. The rest of the Harringtons' meal was a blur of forced pleasantries and thinly veiled insults. They reveled in their power, sending back a dessert, because the raspberry coulis was too assertive, and complaining about the ambient temperature of the dining room. Ava endured it all with an unnerving calm that seemed to irritate them more than any emotional reaction would have. When she finally presented the bill with Blake's steak, dutifully removed by a terrified Mr. Henderson, Richard Harrington didn't even bother to sign the credit card slip. He simply scribbled a line through the tip section and left a single gleaming penny on the tray. It was a final petty act of dominance, a gesture meant to communicate her ultimate worth in their eyes. Ava looked at the coin, a tiny copper disc meant to represent Abraham Lincoln, a man of profound humility. The irony was staggering. After they had swept out of the restaurant in a cloud of arrogance and expensive perfume, a collective sigh of relief rippled through the staff. It was like a storm passing. "Don't worry about them, honey," Sarah said, patting Ava's arm as she cleared the wreckage of their table. The tablecloth was a disaster zone of small spills and crumbs. "They're vermin in nice clothes. We get their kind all the time." But Mr. Henderson, ever the sycophant, saw it differently. He cornered Ava near the service station, his face a mask of frantic anxiety. "What on earth happened over there, Reyes?" he demanded in a harsh whisper. "The Harringtons are our biggest spenders. I had to comp a $150 steak because of you." "Mr. Harrington insisted it was overcooked," Ava stated calmly, stacking the dirty plates. "Your job isn't to be right, it's to make the customer feel right," Henderson seethed. "You argued with the sun, you were clumsy with the water. I can't have this kind of liability on the floor during a premium shift. I'm writing you up." Ava stared at him, a formal write-up on her last day. It was almost comical. For 29 days, she had been a model employee, punctual, efficient, and unflappable. Now, because she had failed to adequately absorb the abuse of a wealthy bully, she was being reprimanded by a man whose only management strategy was fear. "That won't be necessary, Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice even. "Oh, it's necessary," he retorted, pulling a form from his clipboard. "This goes in your permanent file. One more incident like this, and you're out." She just looked at him, a long, quiet look that seemed to hold a universe of unspoken thoughts. For a flicker of a second, Henderson felt a strange unease, a sense that he was missing something crucial, but he dismissed it as insubordination and scribbled angrily on his form. Ava spent the next hour finishing her shift, her movements precise and automatic. She helped Sarah close down her section, refilling salt shakers and polishing silverware for the next day's service. "You handled that really well, you know," Sarah said quietly, folding her last napkin. "With those monsters. I've seen servers leave in tears after a night with the Harringtons. My friend Maria once had Eleanor Harrington tell her she should get her teeth fixed because her smile was unappetizing." "That's horrible," Ava said, the anger she had suppressed now returning as a cold, hard resolve. "It's the job," Sarah said with a shrug, though her eyes betrayed a deep, weary sadness. "We're just part of the scenery. But you've got a spine." Most new girls would have crumbled. They said their goodbyes in the locker room, the small, cramped space smelling of tired feet and cleaning solution. For the last time, Ava changed out of her uniform and into her simple jeans and t-shirt. She packed the worn black apron into her bag. A souvenir. Walking home through the damp, lamplit streets of New York, the full weight of her experience settled over her. It wasn't just about the Harringtons. It was about Henderson's cowardice. It was about Sarah's resignation. It was about Miguel the dishwasher being treated as less than human. Her grandfather had wanted her to understand the business from the ground up. And she did. She understood that its foundation, the very people who polished the silver and served the food, was cracking under the weight of disrespect and neglect. Arthur Sterling had built an empire of fine dining, but he had allowed a culture to fester where the customer was always right, even when they were cruel, and the staff was always disposable. Perhaps that was the real lesson he wanted her to learn. Not just how to run a restaurant, but how to fix a broken one. When she got back to her apartment, she ignored her aching feet and the exhaustion clinging to her bones. She bypassed the small kitchen and the lumpy sofa. Instead, she walked to the window, looking out at the endless constellation of city lights. Each light was a story, a life, a struggle. She had been a part of that struggle for a month. She pulled out her phone. There was only one number she needed to call. It rang twice before a familiar professional voice answered. Marcus Thorne. "Marcus, it's Ava," she said, her voice clear and strong, with no trace of the subservient waitress she had played for a month. "Ava, I trust everything is proceeding as planned. Tomorrow is the 30th day," the lawyer said. "Yes," Ava replied, her eyes fixed on the distant glittering spire of a downtown skyscraper. "Everything is proceeding exactly as it should. The month is up. The trial is over." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "And your decision, are you ready?" Ava thought of the penny Richard Harrington had left her. She thought of Blake's mocking laughter and Eleanor's condescending advice. She thought of Mr. Henderson's cowardice and Sarah's quiet dignity. "Oh, I'm ready," she said, a steely determination hardening her voice. "I'm more than ready. Let's begin. Phase 2 starts tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp, at the restaurant." The next morning, the pre-service buzz at Sterling Steakhouse was the same as any other day. Staff hurried back and forth, polishing glasses, arranging place settings, and discussing the previous night's tips. Mr. Henderson was conducting his morning briefing, his voice a droning litany of specials and reminders. "And we need to push the sea bass tonight, gentlemen. Margins are excellent. Also a reminder about table turnover. We can't have campers, especially on a Friday." He was cut off mid-sentence by the main doors of the restaurant swinging open. It was highly unusual for anyone to enter through the front before opening hours. Every head in the dining room turned. Standing in the doorway was Ava Reyes. But it was not the Ava they knew. The severe, tight bun was gone, replaced by loose, dark waves that cascaded over her shoulders. The drab black uniform had been replaced by a sharply tailored navy blue pantsuit that screamed quiet authority. Her shoes were not the sensible non-slip flats of a waitress, but elegant low heels that made a soft, confident click on the marble floor. She wore minimal makeup, but her eyes, no longer downcast and deferential, were sharp and focused. She looked poised, powerful, and completely out of place. Flanking her was a tall, silver-haired man in an impeccably cut charcoal suit, carrying a leather briefcase. This was Marcus Thorne. Behind them stood two other individuals in business attire looking equally serious. Mr. Henderson's mouth fell open. He stared at Ava, his mind struggling to process the image before him. "Reyes." What is the meaning of this? The staff entrance is in the back, and that is not the proper uniform. Ava didn't answer him. Her gaze swept across the room, taking in the shocked and confused faces of her former colleagues. Sarah was there, her eyes wide with bewilderment. Miguel, on his way to the kitchen, had stopped dead in his tracks. "Good morning, everyone," Ava said, her voice ringing with a clarity and confidence they had never heard before. It was the voice of a leader, not a servant. Marcus Thorne stepped forward. "If I could have your attention, please. My name is Marcus Thorne. I am the executor of the estate of the late Arthur Sterling." A nervous murmur went through the room. As per the terms of Mr. Sterling's last will and testament, Thorne continued, his voice precise and legalistic. Control of the Sterling Restaurant Group and all its assets was to be transferred upon the fulfillment of certain conditions. Those conditions were met as of midnight last night. He paused for dramatic effect, letting the weight of his words settle. Mr. Henderson was now looking apoplectic, his face turning a blotchy red. He clearly thought this was some kind of hostile corporate takeover. "It is my distinct honor," Thorne announced, turning and gesturing towards Ava, "to introduce you to the sole heir of Arthur Sterling's estate, his granddaughter, and the new owner and CEO of Sterling Restaurant Group, Ms. Ava Sterling Reyes." Silence. A profound, deafening silence filled the opulent dining room. You could have heard a pin drop on the thick carpet. The staff stared their brains, trying to reconcile the woman who had just served the demonic Harrington family last night with the powerful figure standing before them. Mr. Henderson's face went from red to a ghostly white. His jaw worked, but no sound came out. He looked at Ava, truly looked at her, and saw the intelligence and composure that had been hiding in plain sight all along. The quiet nod from last night suddenly made a terrifying amount of sense. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes shining with dawning comprehension. The quiet strength, the spine of steel, the way Ava had absorbed the Harringtons' abuse without breaking it all, clicked into place. A slow smile spread across her face. Ava stepped forward. "I know this is a shock." She began, her voice softer now, more personal. "For the past 30 days, I have had the profound privilege of working alongside you. I've polished the same glasses, carried the same heavy trays, and served the same demanding customers. My grandfather wanted me to understand this company from its heart, and the heart of this company is not in the balance sheets or the marketing plans. It's right here in this room. It's you." She turned her gaze directly to Mr. Henderson. The man flinched, as if he'd been struck. "I have seen the dedication and the hard work that goes into making this restaurant what it is," Ava continued. "I have also seen the challenges, the disrespect you are sometimes forced to endure, and the lack of support from management." Henderson began to stammer. "Ms. Reyes, I had no idea. If I had known—" "That's just it, Mr. Henderson," Ava said, her voice turning cold as ice. "It shouldn't matter who I am. Every member of this staff, from the head chef to the person who washes the dishes, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. That is a non-negotiable standard of this company going forward. A standard which you have repeatedly failed to meet." She turned to one of the associates beside Marcus. "Mr. Davies, please escort Mr. Henderson to his office to collect his personal belongings. His tenure with Sterling is over effective immediately." Henderson looked as though he'd been poleaxed. He opened and closed his mouth like a fish, but before he could protest, the associate was gently but firmly guiding him away. Ava then turned to the rest of the stunned staff. Her expression softened again. "My grandfather built a great company, but a company is a living thing. It needs to evolve. My mission is to build a new legacy for Sterling, one built on respect, We're going to start by reviewing wages, benefits, and working conditions for every employee. Your voices will be heard. Sarah, she said, her eyes finding her friend in the small crowd. I'm going to need a senior advisory council of employees to help me understand what needs to change. I'd be honored if you would lead it. Sarah, tears welling in her eyes, could only nod, a radiant smile breaking through. The era of invisibility was over. For the first time, a wave of genuine hope, not fear, washed through the dining room of Sterling Steakhouse. The dawn of a new era had arrived, not with a whisper, but with the confident, unwavering voice of a waitress who now owned the world that had once looked down on her. While Ava was reshaping the culture of her company from the inside, ripples from the previous night were spreading through the upper echelons of New York's business world. Richard Harrington sat in his penthouse office, a sleek, minimalist space of glass and steel overlooking Central Park. He was a man accustomed to getting his way, and today he was preparing to secure the crown jewel of his latest project, the Harrington Tower. The ambitious skyscraper was set to be his legacy, a monument to his own ruthless genius. There was just one snag. A single stubborn property on the corner of the block he was consolidating refused to sell the plot of land occupied by the flagship Sterling Steakhouse. The previous owner, the late Arthur Sterling, had been an old-school sentimentalist who refused to sell the location where his empire began. With the old man gone, Richard assumed it would be a simple matter of bullying or buying out whatever corporate entity now held the reins. His team had secured a meeting for that very afternoon with the new ownership of the Sterling Restaurant Group. "They're a restaurant chain, for God's sake," Richard had grumbled to his son Blake over the phone earlier that morning. "They sell steak and potatoes. I'm offering them 10 times the property's market value. Some faceless board of directors will trip over themselves to take the deal. We'll have the demolition permits by next week." Blake, nursing a hangover and an inflated sense of self-importance, had laughed. "Maybe you can get that clumsy waitress from last night to serve the coffee. That'll be a laugh." Richard had grunted in amusement. The memory of the previous night was a satisfying one. It was always pleasing to remind the little people of their place. At 2 p.m., Richard Harrington, flanked by his own team of lawyers, strode into the Sterling Group's corporate headquarters. The offices were tasteful and traditional, a world of dark wood and brass, a stark contrast to his own modernist lair. He was led to the main boardroom, a grand chamber dominated by a massive circular oak table. "The new CIO will be with you shortly," a polite assistant informed them, before closing the heavy doors. Richard sat down, spreading his files out before him. He was ready for a fight, but he expected a quick and decisive victory. He envisioned some grey-haired accountant, someone who only understood numbers. He would drown the man in figures, leveraging his own net worth and influence until the deal was a foregone conclusion. The boardroom doors opened again. Richard looked up from his papers, a predatory smile already forming on his lips. The smile froze, then shattered. Walking into the room with an air of absolute command was the waitress from the night before, Ava Sterling Reyes. She was dressed in the same impeccable navy blue suit she had worn that morning, her expression calm, cool, and utterly in control. She was followed by Marcus Thorne and a team of her own legal and financial advisors who took their places around the table with quiet efficiency. Richard Harrington could only stare. It was like a scene from a surrealist nightmare. His brain short-circuited. He looked from her to his lawyers, who were equally dumbfounded, and then back to her. This had to be a joke, a prank, an elaborate, insane prank. "You—" He finally managed to croak, his voice a dry rasp. Ava took her seat at the head of the table directly opposite him. The chair was clearly hers. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply met his gaze with the same unnerving calm she had displayed while he and his family had tried to humiliate her. "Mr. Harrington," she said, her voice smooth as polished marble, "thank you for coming. I am Ava Reyes, the new owner and CEO of the Sterling Restaurant Group. I believe you have a proposal for us regarding our Manhattan property." The world seemed to tilt on its axis for Richard. The waitress, the clumsy oaf, the girl his wife had advised to attend community college. This woman now held the key to his legacy project. The power dynamic in the room had not just shifted. It had inverted with the force of a tectonic plate. One of his younger lawyers, not grasping the full, horrifying context, cleared his throat. "Ms. Reyes, we are prepared to make a very generous above-market offer for your property at—" Richard silenced him with a sharp, cutting gesture of his hand. He was still trying to process the sheer impossibility of the situation. He felt a hot, unfamiliar flush of shame and fury rise in his neck. He had built his empire on his ability to read people, to size them up, to identify and exploit their weaknesses. And he had looked at this woman and seen nothing. She had been utterly invisible to him. "What is this?" Richard demanded, his voice low and menacing as he regained a fraction of his composure. "Some kind of stunt. This," Ava replied, gesturing to the boardroom around her, "is a business meeting. You want to buy my property. I'm here to listen to your offer. Though," she added, leaning forward slightly, her eyes locking onto his, "I have to say, your methods of preliminary negotiation last night were unconventional." The barb hit its mark. Richard's face darkened. He was no longer a titan of industry in a power meeting. He was a man who had been caught a bully, who was suddenly, terrifyingly face-to-face with his victim, only to find she now owned the entire playground. The reckoning had begun. The air in the boardroom was thick with a tension that could have been cut with one of Sterling's own steak knives. Richard Harrington, after the initial shock, attempted to regain control. He was a predator, and his instinct was to attack. "Let's cut the theatrics, Miss Reyes," he snarled, forcing his voice back into its usual intimidating baritone. "You've had your little gotcha moment. It's very dramatic. Now let's talk business. I'm offering you $60 million for that parcel of land. That's a ludicrously generous offer, and it expires at the end of this meeting. Take it, and you can play CEO with a nice, fat bank account." He leaned back, attempting to project an aura of dominance, as if the sheer force of his offer could erase the humiliation of the situation. Ava didn't flinch. She listened patiently until he was finished, then gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of her head. "Mr. Harrington, my grandfather didn't build his legacy by selling off its cornerstones," she said calmly. "And I have no intention of starting now. Sterling Steakhouse on that corner is not just a property. It's our flagship. It's our history. It's not for sale." "Everything is for sale," Richard shot back, slapping his palm on the table. "It's a restaurant. You can build another one. I'm offering you the capital to build 10 more. "You see it as a restaurant?" Ava countered, her voice dangerously soft. "I see it as the workplace of 57 employees. People like Sarah, who has given 20 years of her life to this company. People like Miguel, who works 16-hour days to send money to his children. For 30 days I was one of them. I served you and your family. I saw firsthand what this restaurant, as you call it, means to the people who make it run." She paused, letting her words hang in the air. "I also heard things. It's amazing what powerful men will say when they believe the person pouring their water is just part of the furniture." A flicker of unease crossed Richard's face. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about your conversation with your son last night," Ava said, her gaze unwavering. "Something about a friendly zoning commissioner, and how permits can always be bought. You see, after our dinner, I had my team do a little digging into the Harrington Tower project. It's a house of cards, isn't it? Built on shady deals and leveraged debt. Specifically, the rezoning of that entire block was pushed through by a city councilman, Robert Maxwell, whose daughter suddenly received a very generous, fully funded internship at your company 3 months ago. Richard's blood ran cold. The color drained from his face. It was one thing for her to be the new owner. It was another for her to have uncovered the rot at the foundation of his biggest deal. Marcus Thorne chose that moment to slide a slim folder across the table toward Richard's lawyers. You'll find copies of the relevant bank transfers and city council meeting minutes in there, he said blandly. It makes for fascinating reading. Richard stared at Ava, a new kind of fear dawning in his eyes. This wasn't just about a property deal anymore. This was about his survival. You're bluffing. Am I? Ava asked. My grandfather may have been sentimental, but he was also a brilliant businessman. He taught me through his will at least that your greatest asset is your people, and your greatest liability is your arrogance. You assumed I was nothing, so you exposed your weaknesses. You believe money is the only language that matters. So let me speak it for you. If I were to make this information public, the city would launch an investigation. Your financing would evaporate overnight. Your tower would become a hole in the ground, filled with lawsuits. The room was silent. Richard Harrington, the man who broke companies for sport, was being systematically dismantled by a woman he wouldn't have trusted to carry his coat. So here is my counteroffer, Ava continued, leaning forward. Not only are we not selling, but Sterling Group is acquiring the 2 adjacent properties, the ones you've been trying to strong-arm for months. We're going to expand. We'll build a state-of-the-art culinary training institute and a new 5-star hotel. Our project will bring hundreds of well-paying union jobs to the area. It will be a testament to sustainable ethical development. Your monument to greed will never be built. It was a checkmate. A flawless, brutal checkmate. She hadn't just blocked his move, she had taken the entire board. This is insane. Richard stammered, his composure completely gone. He was a man staring into the abyss of his own ruin. No, Ava said, standing up, signaling the end of the meeting. This is business, the kind of business you understand. Last night your son tried to make me stumble. Your wife told me to find a simpler career. You and your family tried to make me feel small and worthless. You failed. She looked at him one last time, not with anger or triumph, but with a kind of clinical pity. You should have tipped your waitress, Mr. Harrington. It was the costliest mistake you ever made. With that, she turned and walked out of the boardroom, leaving Richard Harrington sitting amidst the wreckage of his empire, a man finally and irrevocably broken by the invisible woman he had so casually scorned. The news of the failed deal and the impending investigation hit the financial news wires within the hour. Harrington Holdings stock plummeted. Credit lines were frozen. The unraveling had begun. The collapse of the Harrington dynasty was not a quiet affair. It was a public spectacle, a 5-act tragedy played out on the front pages of the Wall Street Journal and in breathless cable news segments. Ava and her staff watched the initial report on the small television mounted in the restaurant's kitchen. A well-known financial anchor was detailing the sudden catastrophic plunge of Harrington Holdings stock, her expression a mixture of professional gravity and barely concealed glee. The screen then cut to footage of a haggard-looking Richard Harrington, his bespoke suit, looking rumpled and ill-fitting, swarmed by a pack of reporters as he exited a federal courthouse. He looked diminished, his usual aura of untouchable power replaced by the desperate hunted look of a cornered animal. For the first time, he was the one who was invisible, his shouted denials lost in a cacophony of questions. Days later, another story made the rounds among the Sterling staff, passed in gleeful whispers. Blake Harrington had been filmed by a bystander in a Soho boutique, his face a mask of fury as his platinum card was declined 3 times. The video went viral, a perfect slice of schadenfreude, showing the princeling's public humiliation. The Harrington name, once a key that unlocked any door, had become a mark of shame. They had built their world on the fragile scaffolding of public perception and intimidation, and when Ava kicked out the support, the entire edifice came crashing down. While their world crumbled, Ava was busy building a new one. Her first town hall meeting was a study in contrasts. She stood on a small makeshift stage in the main dining room, the same room where she had been humiliated just weeks before. She addressed the assembled staff cooks in their checkered pants servers, in their crisp uniforms dishwashers, still drying their hands on their aprons. She saw the skepticism in their eyes, the weary posture of people who had heard promises from management before. "I know what you're thinking," she began, her voice steady and clear without a microphone. "You're thinking, here comes another suit with a fancy speech. But for the last month, I wasn't a suit. I was one of you. I felt the ache in my feet after a 12-hour shift. I felt the sting of being treated like I was invisible. And I decided that if I ever had the power to change, that I would." She laid out her vision, not in corporate jargon, but in human terms. She didn't just announce a wage increase. She talked about it meaning a parent could attend their child's school play instead of working a double. She didn't just unveil a benefits package. She spoke of the peace of mind that comes from knowing a sick family member could be cared for without the fear of financial ruin. "This is the new Sterling standard," she declared, her voice ringing with passion. "Respect is not a bonus. It's the baseline. Dignity is not a privilege. It is your right. From this day forward, any customer who is abusive to any member of our staff will be asked to leave. You will be protected. You will be valued. You are the foundation of this company, and we are going to start treating you like it." A hesitant applause started, then grew into a thunderous, sustained ovation. It was more than just noise. It was the sound of hope being restored, of years of pent-up frustration being released. Ava saw tears in the eyes of Jean-Pierre, the stoic head chef. She saw Miguel the dishwasher, standing taller than she'd ever seen him before. Change wasn't instantaneous or easy. It was a daily, deliberate effort. Sarah's employee council became the engine of the revolution. In their first meeting, gathered around a prep table in the kitchen, ideas flowed freely. Miguel, speaking through a translator, suggested a more flexible scheduling system to help employees with multiple jobs or childcare needs. A young line cook proposed a mentorship program where senior chefs could train newcomers. Sarah advocated for updated, more comfortable uniforms and a fund to replace worn-out shoes. Ava approved every single proposal. One afternoon, Ava overheard a mid-level manager, a holdover from Henderson's regime, berating a busboy for a minor mistake. Ava didn't raise her voice. She simply stepped in, asked the manager to join her in her office, and calmly explained the new philosophy. "We don't lead by fear here anymore," she said. "We lead by example. Your job is to lift your team up, not tear them down. You can either adapt to that culture, or you can find a new one elsewhere." The manager, chastened, chose to adapt. The message spread like wildfire. The new boss meant what she said. 3 months later, the flagship restaurant was transformed. The old heavy draperies were gone, replaced by lighter fabrics that let in the afternoon sun. The staff uniforms were subtly redesigned for comfort and style. The atmosphere was vibrant, professional, yet warm. It was this transformed space that Ava entered for her dinner with Sarah. Sarah, now radiating a calm confidence in her role as Director of Employee Experience, greeted her with a hug. "You know," Sarah said, as they were led to their table, "Maria, who's going to be our server tonight. She just enrolled in a Level 1 sommelier course. The company is paying for it." The young waitress, Maria, was a picture of poised professionalism. Ava watched her not as a CEO, inspecting her staff, but as a guest and a former colleague. She saw the genuine smile, the efficient movements, the quiet pride in her work. When Maria described the wine pairings, her eyes lit up with passion. This wasn't just a job for her. It was the start of a career. Ava thought of Eleanor Harrington's sneering advice: "Find a simple career, something you can handle." She had tried to put Ava in a box to limit her potential, based on a uniform. Here in her own restaurant, Ava was now doing the exact opposite. She was giving people the tools to shatter their own boxes. "Everything has changed," Sarah said, looking around the room. "It's not just the money. People feel seen. That's what you did, Ava. You made people feel seen." "You all did this together," Ava corrected gently. "I just opened the door." As the meal concluded, Ava paid the bill. On the receipt below, a tip that made Maria's eyes go wide, she wrote a short note. "Maria, your passion for your work is inspiring. You have a bright future here. Keep learning. Ava." She saw the young woman read the note, a slow, brilliant smile spreading across her face. It was a small gesture, but it was everything. It was the encouragement she had never received, the validation she had craved. Leaving the restaurant, Ava paused on the sidewalk, looking back at the warm, inviting glow emanating from the windows. She touched the small silver S on the door, the logo of her family's empire. For her grandfather, it had been a symbol of culinary excellence and commercial success. For her, it had become something more. It was a promise that the worth of a person is inherent and absolute, not defined by their job title or the balance in their bank account. She had taken her grandfather's legacy of fine dining and infused it with a new legacy of human decency. She finally understood the old man's final lesson. An empire built of brick and mortar can crumble just like Harrington Tower. But an empire built on the strength, loyalty, and dignity of its people is a foundation that can last forever. And so Ava's story reminds us that beneath every uniform there is a person with a story, with potential, and with power we might never suspect. The Harrington family made the mistake of judging a book by its cover and ended up losing their entire library. Ava's journey wasn't just about revenge, it was about revolution. She didn't just take over a company, she transformed it from the inside out, proving that a business built on respect is stronger than any empire built on fear. What do you think? Was this the ultimate karma or a lesson in how we should treat everyone regardless of their station in life? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more tales of unbelievable twists and ultimate justice. Thank you for listening.